As battles raged into the early morning hours, 3,000 demonstrators who had not yet left Tiananmen Square pledged instead to die for democracy. However, many who waited at Tiananmen Square did not know about the shootings. When told soldiers were using real bullets, they did not know what to believe. However, the fact that so many had died was felt by many to be reason enough for the demonstrators to stay in Tiananmen Square because of the blood shed to protect them. Others argued they should all leave because more than enough had died, more than enough blood had been shed. Soldiers surrounded the demonstrators at Tiananmen Square, their guns at the ready. Many of the students stood up. They were soon surrounded by troops, APCs, and tanks. The Chinese government broadcast an announcement. All people in the square should leave now. Knowing that many had already died throughout the city, and that the soldiers would use deadly force, one of the student leaders negotiated with the army commander for permission to leave. Permission was granted. A voice vote was held among the students gathered round the memorial to the martyrs. They were asked to decide, should they leave or should they stay? Those shouting to stay were much louder than those shouting to leave, so how many stayed is unknown. Of those who left, they joined hands, sang the International, the Chinese national anthem, and cried, chanted, shouted insults at the soldiers who had opened up a corridor allowing safe passage. What happened to those who stayed is in dispute. Video shows hundreds of students who may have elected to stay behind, facing columns of soldiers and tanks. It has been claimed that hundreds died or were crushed by tanks as they defended Tiananmen Square.
因为有一些同学，他们对这个政府、对这支军队还抱有希望，他们以为。 顶多是军队把大家强行的架走，可已经把他们碾成了肉饼。
At Tiananmen Square, soldiers had bulldozed everything together in a huge heap: body, shoes, tents, banners, and set fire to it, creating a huge column of flame and smoke. Most of the students decided to leave and joined hands and proceeded in an orderly manner between rows of troops whose commanders agreed to let the students leave unharmed. Those students who had joined hands continued between the two lines of troops, singing the Internationale, only to discover their way blocked by rows of approaching tanks, which began to shoot and run over bodies. At the same time, the soldiers behind them also began to shoot. Blood filled the streets, blood and human pulp. How many were killed will never be known. Hospitals could only give accounts of the wounded and those who had died in their care. Most of the dead still lay where they had fallen. Bodies were also fast disappearing. Platoons of soldiers had been seen picking up bodies and putting them in the buses, which were then carted away and disposed of. There were claims that many of those disposed of were still alive but badly wounded. Those killed included university professors, students, technical people, officials, workers, owners of small businesses, retired workers, high school students, grade school students, from old ladies in their 90s to little girls as young as 9. Later a woman cried out, "Where will we find the souls of our heroes?" The Tank Man. On Chang'an Avenue, a lone man walked out into the street and faced a column of tanks leaving Tiananmen Square. Gunfire burst out, but he stood his ground. He began yelling, "Why are you here? You have done nothing but create misery. My city is in chaos because of you." Carefully watching this sequence, we note the bicycle riders as something that makes the tank man take several steps backward. The bike rider signals the tank as two men dressed in blue shirts run from behind and grab the tank man roughly by the arms and neck. Note the blue-shirted man at the top then signals the tanks to move forward as the tank man continues to be rushed off the street while held securely by the neck and left arm, which is typical of police security. What may have been one of the bravest, most heroic men in the history of China was probably beaten, tortured, and murdered by the Chinese government that same day. For the next several days, weeks, and months, the Chinese government unleashed a wave of terror, arresting, beating, and imprisoning tens of thousands of those who dared protest for freedom. Even the Communist Party was purged of all those who had shown any sympathy for the student-led democracy movement. People were frightened. The terror had begun. The party had again established its right to arrest, purge, denounce, and execute anyone who dared to disagree. Over the following 5 days, demonstrations continued to break out in over 180 Chinese cities. All were brutally crushed. Chinese leaders had decided that they would use severe measures to stamp out the first signs of unrest or turmoil as soon as they appear. TV continually broadcast images of demonstrators asking the public to inform on their friends, families, and loved ones and to turn them in. Telephone hotlines were set up to make it easy to denounce anyone the public knew or suspected to sympathize with the students. Soon, jails throughout the country were filled to capacity. The pictures of 21 student activists were repeatedly shown on TV. The public was asked to turn them in.
根本就代表不了人民政府，政府没有这样用坦克车、用装甲车对这帮学生进行付代价。
An interview of Joe Ben, conducted by ABC News, was intercepted by Chinese authorities, who then made a nationwide broadcast calling upon informers to turn the man in. He was soon arrested, tortured and sentenced to 10 years in prison.
这个歹毒的反革命煽动罪犯叫肖斌，现年42岁，是停薪留职人员。
His crime? Telling the truth. Truth and justice is punished in China. Truth are called lies. Lies become truth. There would be only one version of events, the lies told by the Chinese government. Disagree, and you might die.
稍有常识的人都会看出，如果我们的铁骑继续前进，这个螳臂挡车的歹徒难道能够阻挡得了吗？摄像机拍下的这个画面，同西方某些国家的宣传恰恰相反，正好说明了我们的军队保持了最大限度的克制。
On June 9th, Deng appeared on national TV, thanking the army and congratulating them on a job well done, for bringing order and stability to the country, and for crushing all those who cried out for freedom.
在北京执行戒严任务的中国人民解放军军级以上干部。